Well, as we look in the news, there's a lot of things happening between the relationship between America and Israel. And I remember when I first trusted Jesus, I read through the scriptures. I saw that there was going to be this Antichrist trying to oppose Jesus and mimic what he was going to do, and so forth. But there were a couple of things that stood out to me. It's like this Bible, stuff in Book of Revelation, it can't be so because the American dollar is too strong and our relationship with Israel is too great. We would never turn against Israel. Well, let's watch this.
And I just want to just cause you to stop and think about this for a moment. March 25th is this abstention vote in the UN, really an unprecedented vote by the United States. And at 1:30 in the morning, the next day on March the 26th, the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapses, really sending shockwaves through our country. Now, we can ask the question, is this coincidence or is this providence? Well, there's nothing in the Bible that tells us that directly, so I can't say 100% that this was God's action of discipline or judgment on America. But it's difficult not to see some kind of connection here, I think. We've Jimmy Evans has had a guest on his program often here at endtimes.com, a man named Bill Koenig. Bill's a close friend of mine as well. And he wrote a book years ago called The Eye of the Storm. And he chronicles in that book and highlights dozens of connections between actions in the U.S. against Israel and then disasters, many of them natural disasters in the United States. And of course, he takes this all the way back to Genesis chapter 12, verse 3, where God says, the one who blesses Israel, I will bless. But then it's very emphatic, but the one who curses you, I must curse. And what we see today with the United States in this kind of withering support for Israel could be a kind of a upping of God's judgment and discipline on America. In the midst of all these things we've seen, the speech by Senator Schumer, the comments by Vice President Kamala Harris, the abstention vote in the UN, with all that happening at the same time, there's this continuing call for a two-state solution as well. And, they're calling on Israel to have a two-state solution with a nation next to them that wants all the land from the river to the sea, wants them wiped off the face of the earth, and won't even ever acknowledge their right to even exist as a nation. So one thing we can be sure of in all of this is that America's growing rift with Israel is serious for the United States. I mean, it could be, again, part of the scenario that's speeding the demise of America. It could be part of the reason that America is not mentioned in Bible prophecy. There's all kinds of things in America today, our burgeoning debt, our weakening support for Israel, all the people that are coming into our country, we don't know who they are, that could bring all kinds of terror into our nation, even bringing, dirty bombs into our country that could devastate our nation. I think ultimately, I've mentioned this before, that I think God's final judgment on America will be the rapture. When the Lord Jesus comes and all the salt and light is extracted out of this country in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye. But there are a lot of plausible scenarios, but it could also be all these things kind of happening and converging at the same time, kind of a convergence of these events that will bring America down.
Jan, you think a lot about this. I know you talk a lot about this and the anti-Semitism. Give us your thoughts.
Well, the correct title of the book, which Dr. Hitchcock didn't quite have right, is Bill Koenig's book, Eye to Eye, Facing the Consequences of Dividing Israel. Book about that thick, about all the consequences that happen to America when we turn on our greatest ally, certainly in the Middle East and possibly in the whole world, the consequences from God's perspective. And I am super concerned, and I know Mark is too, and Alex, I want you to weigh into this as well, but I'm just super concerned that as we speak, we have an administration that's very duplicitous, and I think we can explain what we mean by that here in just a moment, because they're doing a few things right, but ultimately, the left in Washington despises this nation of Israel, because today's left worships Islam and hates Judeo-Christian. It's part of the crazy signs of the times. It's, again, what do you think these last days? They're going to be just crazy upside down. Why don't you explain the duplicitness of that's going on, Mark? And then we've got to get Alex in here.
Yeah, as I kind of look at the scene, the U.S. In the UN held back and didn't vote for the support of Israel, and therefore allowed the enemies of Israel to, condemn Israel and so forth. And that was a great tragedy. And then there's a number of things that happen. Stock market drops, bridge collapses, etc. And Jan, you and I talked a lot about that. But the thing that is so amazing, even today, we have the 6th Fleet moving from Western Mediterranean towards Israel. We've got the 5th Fleet there. We've got the USS Eisenhower moving towards Israel right now because there's this threat from Iran. Now, this is crazy. This is the duplicity of politicians. I want you to think about this. We give billions of dollars to Iran. We help encourage them. We're against Israel, and yet when there's going to be some conflict over there, then we send our military, and supposedly we're their friends. Listen, you're either for Israel or you're against Israel. And we've seen this in American history, right? This sort of duplicity, like our friends in South Korea suffered because, oh yeah, we're for you, and then we're not for you, right? We see this in Afghanistan. We saw this in the Korean War. It was a thing that frustrated Douglas MacArthur. Either you guys are going to be in to win this, or you get out. You don't play this sort of duplicity. And we're seeing this again, and Israel is in the middle of it, and it's going to end poorly for America because the bottom line is, if you're not on God's side, if you're not the ones who are blessing Israel, protecting Israel, encouraging Israel, it's only a matter of time until the shoe falls. And so these are amazing times. I don't know if you got any thoughts on the duplicity and so forth that we're seeing.
Well, there's a very long track record of, unfortunately, U.S. government duplicity, and I say this with a heavy heart. I love my country, I love the United States, but it's shameful what our government has done for many generations. We betrayed Chiang Kai-shek, we betrayed our allies all over the world. And I was in Israel in 2012. I actually went as part of a family vacation, but of course I'm always working. And so some Jewish friends in New York organized a bunch of meetings for me. And one of the most interesting interviews I ever did in my entire life, and I've interviewed a lot of interesting people, was the deputy speaker of the Israeli Knesset at that time, their parliament. His name was Moshe Feiglin. He's still around. He was part of Likud at the time. And some of the things he said to me, I was like, really? Really? But he saw what's happening now 12 years ago. He said, first of all, we're actually kind of tired here of the U.S. government giving us money and then telling us what to do, telling us what land we have to give up, how we're allowed to defend ourselves. Frankly, he said, why don't you keep your money? We've got God on our side, and we'll do what we need to do to protect ourselves and to protect our country. And, that was back when, at least publicly, all the politicians claimed to support Israel. Yeah, they were still sending billions of dollars to the Arab and Islamic governments that wanted to wipe it off the map, but at least they pretended, right? Now we fast forward 12 years, and we see the mask coming off. The duplicity is out of control. I encourage you guys to read that interview. It was, again, one of the most fascinating interviews I ever did, and he really foresaw that this was going to come. And he said, stop telling us what to do. And really, that's what's going on here. The Biden administration is like, why don't you have a ceasefire? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Why don't you let the Israelis decide for themselves what's best for them? And you want to brag about the billions of tax dollars you sent over there. Why don't we talk about the $20+ billion you sent to Islamic governments that are all sworn to the destruction of the Jews? The duplicity is just out of control. But frankly, I think at this point, it's what we should expect out of Washington, D.C., not because it's okay, not because it's justified, but because we've got a long track record. They have turned their backs on God. They have turned their backs on the truth and on God's people. And I suspect it's going to get a whole lot worse.
And if you think about it in this sense, if they're betraying America, will they not betray Israel and everybody else to their own end? Yeah.
Well, as we speak, Israel is expecting some kind of an attack as we speak because of the strike in Damascus of a week or so ago. And they're waiting for retaliation. It could be catastrophic, or maybe it will blow over, but I don't think so. But that's what's causing all this activity, is what they're expecting by way of an Iranian, let's say, getting even with Israel. So we're at a really crucial time. Both in the diplomatic relations, in every respect. Geopolitically, we're at an absolute point of crisis. I hope you're praying for the peace of Jerusalem. It's never been needed more than right now. I encourage you to get on. Thank you for doing it. I encourage you to sign up for Amir Sarfati's Telegram channel. That is where you'll get more hour by hour, actually even minute by minute update on all of this. It's better than any cable news. It's better than any news source that I've ever found. And I'm talking about Middle East now, and specifically the conflict that's been going on since October the 7th. He's analyzing it. He's slipping in videos. It's been an education following Amir on his Telegram channel, so I encourage you to do that.